Well, hello, folks, and once again, welcome back to Senate District 2. I'm Texas State Senator Bob Hall, continuing our series on our Texas border and what's happening down there. And as many of you know, a while back, we held a conference at the Capitol and had about a dozen speakers come in and talk to us about what was going on at the border. And there were people that live down there that are living it. And one of those speakers was Sheriff Roy Boyd from Goliad, who had very interesting talk that he gave us about what is actually happening at the border. So I've asked him to join us here today to tell us about what is actually going on at the Texas border. Sheriff, welcome. Glad to have you here with us today.
Senator, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's my honor to be able to come here and talk to you. I'll give a little bit of information about for those who do not know where Goliad is. Goliad is a small South Texas county, about 859 square miles, 7,400 people live here. We're about halfway between Laredo and Houston on Highway 59. So we're about a couple hours, two and a half hours so from the border. But what we found is all the issues that happen at the border have a direct impact on Goliad County and the safety and security of the citizens right here in the community that I serve as a sheriff. And so I took office at the beginning of last year. And what we saw was a sudden increase in pursuits, in arrests, in criminal trespass. And we were trying at first to piece it together, and it didn't take long to figure out that everything that we were dealing with on the increase was actually a direct result of the open border policy of the current administration. These things have come to us and they've changed the dynamic within our county. And so what we found ourselves doing was trying to keep up as best we can. Just so everybody knows, Goliad, like most counties, we have a small sheriff's office. We run 1 to 2 deputies on the street at any given time to cover about 1,700 miles of roadway within the county. And so it's very difficult to be everywhere. So we started seeing people trespassing on ranches. We started seeing stash sites with trash in them. We could tell that the cartel was bringing people into our jurisdiction and using places without permission of the landowners and setting up these stash sites. Eventually, we uncovered 16 stash sites within Goliad County, which is a location where cartels or their operatives will actually place illegal aliens, and they'll put them there while they go get gas or while they wait for somebody from Houston to come and pick them up. They'll also strip stolen vehicles at those locations. We were finding back seats of trucks. They'll use them just to get arrest from time to time, or when there's a lot of law enforcement activity, to hide from us. And so we started seeing a lot of that. We were engaging in a lot of pursuits. We were conducting a lot of investigations, gathering all the intel we could. And so what we did was we reached out to the Department of Homeland Security. We have a really good relationship. And from those initial contacts in those initial stash sites, we began developing cases on Gulf cartel members that were coming right here into our small rural county. And so it didn't take too long for all of this to overwhelm us. And I like to say that the Governor Abbott and the Texas Senate threw us a lifeline with the Operation Lone Star funding grant that was given to us. Went to a meeting with the governor, met with some of the legislators. They eventually wound up providing us with the funding. And so Goliad County Sheriff's Office was able to hire 3 deputies that are dedicated to nothing but Operation Lone Star efforts. So once we got that funding, what we did was I went out, contacted other sheriffs, and we formed a 20-agency task force that we call Operation Lone Star Task Force. And we've now combined our efforts to go all the way from the Gulf Coast all the way out to San Antonio. And then there's some other jurisdictions that wrap around to the north as well. And we are working in a collaborative effort to chase down and to push those cartels and their operatives out of our jurisdictions. It's been very successful thus far. I will tell you that we identified 4 major organizations that were coming through Goliad County. As a result of our investigations and taking down many of those individuals, most of those organizations have now pushed to the west and are going through San Antonio. But it doesn't mean that we're out of the woods. We're all still working together and we're trying to do stuff because the cartel is constantly coming in and probing us to see whether we're active in certain areas of the county. So I'll give you a good example of the last 2 weeks. What we've been finding on the northwest end of our county is somebody is coming in, cutting chains on rural properties and putting their own locks on private property gates. And what they're doing is they're seeing if anybody discovers it, because if nobody discovers it, they'll come back and utilize that property in the future to stash people, use as stash sites, strip stolen vehicles, hide stolen vehicles. And so we've had to work really hard to try to basically keep up with all the changes that the cartel and their people are bringing to us at a small community like this. But this stuff, it continues on. We had a meeting, and I'll give you a little bit of what we've done. We had a meeting yesterday with the command staff level folks from Operation Lone Star, and I'm gonna give just a couple of numbers there, Senator. So for the first 3 quarters of 2022, this is just Goliad County, we had 1,617 traffic stops. We apprehended 90 illegal aliens in Goliad County. We had 55 felony arrests, 32 misdemeanor arrests. We targeted 4 major gangs that were operating in Goliad County coming through. We've identified and targeted 2 cartel organizations that have been operating in and around Goliad County. And we've had 23 forfeitures, being predominantly vehicles we've seized from the cartel and their operatives as they come through. So this task force that I told you about, that only comes about because of the legislature and Governor Abbott, we put together, and I'll just give you 2 of our ops because we're running operations, combined operations where all the agencies come together on a regular basis. But I'm just going to give you one from September, one from October, just to kind of give you a taste of what all of us coming together does and show what you're getting with your money as far as enforcement activity. So our task force operation, we ran September 6th through 9th. We had 323 traffic stops. We had 12 vehicle pursuits. We had 5 bailouts. If you don't know what a bailout is, that's where a driver who's hauling illegal aliens will flee from us, and they'll usually go through a fence into the brush, and everybody runs. We have 49 arrests during that operation, 18 illegal aliens turned over to the Border Patrol. We had 7 drug seizures, 4 stolen vehicles recovered, which is a major problem in Texas. 4 vehicles seized that weren't stolen but were being used by cartel and their operatives. We took them from them. And then 7 weapons that were seized during those stops. And then you go up to our first operation for October, which was October 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So, and it was really 48, over those 3 days, it was 48 hours of interdiction. We had 110 traffic stops, we had 26 arrests, we had 13 illegal aliens apprehended, we had 3 fugitive arrests. Those are people that have warrants from other places and are fugitives from justice. We had 1 missing juvenile recovered. We had 2 stolen vehicles recovered. We had 3 firearms recovered that were being taken south as part of a package with some other items. We had 5 drug seizures in those 48 hours and 2 vehicles that we seized. And so, like I can't stress this enough, we're a small rural community. Our people aren't used to us being involved in this kind of organized crime, and it being right here in their own backyard. And a lot of the folks in our county have been scared to go out and utilize their own property, especially a lot of the women who live alone. They call because they're scared to go out and go right around their own property. They're scared to be out in the evenings. That should not be taking place in Goliad County. But unfortunately, we find ourselves in a situation where it has become the modern truth, and it's all directly tied back to the border. And usually what we would have in a county like this is we'd have some thefts, we might have a little bit of drugs, it's mostly petty criminal activity that you find. But that dynamic has changed. And our top 4 arrest categories are: number 1 is drugs, which of course the same people bringing the illegal aliens into our communities are the same people, same organizations bringing the drugs in. Our number 2 arrest charge in Goliad County so far this year is engaging in organized criminal activity. That's a crime that probably went many years without being charged in Goliad, and now is our #2 charge. #3 is smuggling of persons, and our #4 charge is evading arrest. The dynamic has drastically changed in our rural communities. We've gone from minor crimes and disturbances and DWIs to fighting organized crime that's transnational criminal activity. And it is extremely complex, and the investigations take a lot of effort. And that's where the Operation Lone Star Fund that y'all have graciously provided us comes in. Because without it, I'm going to tell you, there's no way in the world that we could do it. And so we're extremely grateful to Governor Abbott and to members like yourself of the legislature who provided us that lifeline and kept us from going under. Because the border comes in and out of the news cycle, and people don't always think about it as being away from the border. It's not truly a border crisis as it is a crisis for our way of life. And we're trying to maintain a peaceful way of life for people who have chosen to live in rural Texas. People don't live in Goliad for hustle and bustle. We have 2 traffic lights in the entire county, Senator. You know, people come here because they want to live a good and peaceful life. They want to raise their family in a good school district, and they want their kids to be able to stand at the school bus stop without worrying about crime. I'm going to tell you, my kids stand out at the school bus stop, and I've seen the cartel drive by out there because I know some of those people. And I've witnessed them drive right past where my children get on the school bus and get off in the evenings. It's a very, very uncomfortable feeling to have that. And to see some of the stuff that you would only think are on the border right here. And most of you have seen the wristbands down at the border, you know, where they put the wristbands on the illegal aliens as they bring them across to prove they've paid and who they've paid and what raft they're supposed to be on. This right here came off a ranch in Goliad. So these are the same people that you see down at the border. These are the same people being moved by the cartel. And those individuals are being brought right here, you know, finding ID cards right here in Goliad, Texas, you know, from Mexico, El Salvador. This one's from El Salvador. And we've picked up a whole lot of them. Predominantly voter ID cards from Mexico, if that's not ironic. Mexico requires a voter ID card with your picture on it to vote, and that's their predominant ID that we wind up finding down here. But I think beyond the crime, it's the humanitarian side, Senator. And what's really going on is not immigration, but slave trade. So these individuals, they enter into an agreement while they're in Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, wherever they may be. They enter into an agreement to pay so much money to get brought to the border of Texas and then to come across. So they've knowingly engaged in a criminal act that carries them into Texas. But once they get to Houston, which is where I would say better than 90% of the people who come across, you know, from Laredo South are headed to, they wind up in Houston, maybe even all the way up to Del Rio. They end up in Houston. And at that point, they're told, you're not free to go. You owe us another $10,000. And then they're distributed around the United States as slaves because they have to work that off. I have a letter in my desk right now from a sex slave house in Rockport, Texas, that articulates that in America, we have something called a slave boy and a slave girl. And it takes you 8 to 13 years to purchase your freedom once you're here, brought into the country, and you're placed into slavery. That's despicable. So it's not only a criminal issue, it's not only a national security issue, it is a crime against morality and a crime against humanity that's being committed. You know, and George Washington, when he swore in as the first president of the United States, he placed his left hand on the Bible, but it was open to Deuteronomy 28, and that's the blessings of a nation that follow the laws of God and the curses of a nation that does not follow the laws of God. And we have turned our back on the Lord, and we've turned our back on the law, and we are no longer following what the founding fathers wanted. And we are bringing people in knowing they're going to be slaves in our own country. We're creating a peon class that will live amongst us in the millions. And when those people finally decide to rise up and demand their piece of freedom, their piece of the American dream, it's our own fault for allowing this to happen. It never should happen. And so I think we really have to do something, because every person, every human in the earth is made in the image of God. and nobody deserves to be put into indentured servitude or slavery. It's just not right. And it's not right for the good citizens of Texas to be denied their constitutional right to enjoy the property they lawfully own. And in my opinion, the federal government is violating the constitutional rights of every person who can't freely exercise their rights and utilize the property that they own. And that's the way that I look at it. I have a duty. My first duty is to uphold the Constitution. It's not being upheld above us. So we have to do something at our level. And so I can only mitigate the problem. I can't solve it. That's for a pay grade well above mine, but I'm doing everything I can. And a lot of other good people are doing everything they can as well. And we appreciate everything the governor and the legislator have done for us in this, because without it, we'd be up a creek.
Well, Sheriff, I think what you just described there, most people that have concerns about the folks coming across the border as being those who are trying to seek asylum here in the U.S. because of the horrible living conditions or threats to them in wherever they're coming from, misunderstand that they don't quite understand that everybody that crosses the border is crossing the border with the permission of the cartels. That there are very, very few, if any. There may be one or two here or there that actually manage to get across on their own, but the rest of them are coming here under contract with the cartels that they have to pay back, either by giving up their children to the child pornography, child sex trade, or the men and women going into the sex trade, or some form of slavery. That it is not the humanitarian thing to have our border open and let the people come in, because they are just moving into a life of human slavery when they come here to the United States. And so for those that think that shutting our border down and stopping this from coming across is doing these people was wrong, we would be doing them a favor by keeping them out of the slave trade and what they're going to have to pay back after they get here. And it's that and the money they earn. I mean, the stories about the significant increase in the money sent back to Mexico and to other countries by people once they get here just confirms that they are here at the permission of the cartels and have an owe them. And the cartels do collect on it.
You're absolutely right, Senator. And based on what you just said, I'll show your point. One Saturday, one of my deputies was out working. He stopped a vehicle that had 4 females in it. One was a female from Dallas. The other 3 were illegal aliens. Our investigation revealed that the 3 girls who were illegal aliens, they were on their way to Houston, thought they were going to be reunited with their families who are illegally here in the United States. But what we found out was they were actually being taken to Chinatown in Houston. They were going to be put into sex slavery. And they had no clue. And so the driver actually had their fake Social Security cards hidden in her underwear. We discovered it when we stripped her down in the jail. And she had been recruited at a bar in Dallas to come down and pick these girls up. They had gone, put them in a hotel, took pictures of them, tried to make it look like they were coming back from South Padre Island from a weekend getaway. And had we not encountered them and done something about it, they all would have been in sex slavery right now here in the United States. And so that's something that's happening on a regular basis. And people don't realize the inhumane thing to do is to have open borders, because like you said, the cartel controls everybody who comes over. You don't just cross over from Mexico into the United States. I get intelligence reports where people try, and the cartel either kills them or mutilates them, cuts them up. It's not tolerated down there, and it's not something that should be happening. So it's not the humane thing to do to let the border be open. It's actually an inhumane thing to do, because we are now taking free people and they are being put into slavery right here in the United States. And so my opinion on them leaving bad situations and coming here is fix your own country. If I lived in Washington, D.C., Yeah, I'd want it fixed. If you've been there lately, it's a dump, so I mean, fix what you have. It's not our job to fix the rest of the world and to take everybody in. But to be quite honest with you, this is all by design. And so, like I said, it's way above my pay grade.
I mean, I think that the most important message I'd like for everybody to understand is there's a misconception that we have these thousands and thousands of people that are coming here that that are going to get a better life living here. They're actually coming here and are going to be enslaved and are enslaved in deep debt to the cartels that will collect their money or kill them. And it's that simple. And the folks that are bringing young children, those children will be sex slaves, child pornography for years and to come. And so the humane thing to do would be to go back to the program that we had of remain in Mexico and come in legally. That way, there's no obligation to the cartels. We can cut that tie and get people to come here so they can actually have a place for their families to be safe and to live by doing it legally with a program that was working. Now, is it perfect? No. But could it use some changes? Absolutely. There's no question about we could do things to improve it, and we need to work on doing that. But what we can't continue to allow is the flow of people that are by the thousands and thousands a day, because we're not doing any of them a favor by letting them come in.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's probably far worse than what a lot of people realize. I've seen it firsthand where people will be enslaved to a restaurant owner and they'll put 10, 15 of them living in a one-bedroom apartment, and they'll get 5 years in, and these people are frustrated because they are being, forced to live together. And then what happens is the owner of the restaurant then turns around and sells them to another restaurant owner, and they start their payments all over again. And once they get done with that, then they get sold again. I've seen people sold 3 times in one town back when I wasn't quite sure what was going on before we comprehended the totality of this. But it's something that's happening on a basis that's far more frequent than anybody would like to admit.
Wow. I think what you just described, there are very few people that are aware of that. And I really appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you in that fight down there with your folks just north of the border, but might as well be right on the border with what you've got coming through there in a county that's smaller than some of our small cities in Texas in there. And so you've got your hands full there, Sheriff, and I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the folks about here today?
I think the key thing is, to be quite honest with you, Senator, I think that we have to stay on a conservative track in Texas. And I think people need to understand that if we leave that conservative track and we leave behind our biblical principles, that we are going to find ourselves in a state that is no longer prosperous and a great place to live. I have 4 children. I'm the 7th generation in Texas in my family. I don't want my kids to have to go somewhere else to find a free and conservative state. We have to maintain this, and we have to maintain our state's rights and its proper place with regards to the federal government. We have to stand up for our freedoms. We have to draw a line in the sand, and we've got to do something, because if not, then we're all going to find ourselves living in servitude to a much more powerful government.
You're deadly right in what you just said. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And so hopefully we will soon step up and find the will to do something about it. I think we know that we can do something about it. I think we have the authority to do it. Right now, all I see is we don't quite yet have the will to do it, but hopefully that'll be coming soon.
Well, God bless you. God bless all of your counterparts there in the legislature who have helped us out, and Governor Abbott as well. So may the Lord look after you and take care of you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We're very grateful, Roy Boyd, Sheriff of Goliad, for your service and all the folks that are working with you. May God bless you, God bless Texas, and God bless America.
Yes, sir.